They started with a Philippine peso 1.2 million budget for what they believed was a simple family home. Nothing extravagant, no luxury finishes. Just a modest house where their family could finally live together under one roof. This amount was not guessed or casually decided. It was saved over many years, mostly from overseas work, with sacrifices made along the way, delayed vacations, postponed purchases, and constant discipline just to reach that number. At the beginning, Philippine peso 1.2 million felt safe. Friends said it was enough. Contractors said it was workable. Everything sounded reassuring. But as construction slowly moved forward, expenses began to pile up in ways they did not expect. One payment after another, one adjustment after another, until they reached a painful realization. Almost Philippine peso 2 million had already been spent, and the house was still unfinished, with no clear end in sight. This was not a dream mansion or an investment property. This was a first home meant for daily living, family meals, and quiet weekends. Like many Filipino families, especially OFWs, this house represented stability in return, proof that years of hard work abroad were finally turning into something permanent. Every remittance sent home carried hope, not excess. That is why the budget mattered so much. Every peso had a purpose. But when costs began to exceed expectations, stress quickly followed. Conversations that were once hopeful turned tense. Plans had to be revised. Other family needs were placed on hold. The emotional weight of watching savings disappear faster than expected was heavier than the physical construction itself. What should have been an exciting chapter slowly turned into anxiety and constant uncertainty. At the beginning, everything looked simple on paper. The design had only 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, and basic finishes. No high ceilings, no fancy tiles, no complicated structures. The house was designed to stay within budget, and every decision was guided by that limitation. When the contractor reviewed the plans, the response was confident and reassuring. The budget was described as more than enough. There was no warning about risks, no discussion about buffers, and no mention of what could go wrong. That confidence created comfort. It made the family feel secure enough to proceed without asking deeper questions. Unfortunately, that early comfort would later become one of the most expensive assumptions of the entire project. As construction progressed, small decisions began to appear. A slightly better material here, a minor adjustment there. Each change felt reasonable and affordable on its own. None of them felt large enough to cause alarm. The contractor continued to reassure them that everything was still within budget. Because these changes were spaced out over time, they never felt overwhelming in the moment. But construction budgets do not fail all at once. They fail quietly, piece by piece. Each small decision added weight to the total cost, and without proper tracking, the family had no clear idea how far they were drifting from the original plan. By the time concerns started to surface, reversing those decisions was no longer possible. Then the reality of material costs began to hit. Cement prices increased. Steel quantities turned out to be higher than initially estimated. Delivery costs fluctuated. These were not dramatic spikes, but steady increases that slowly squeezed the budget. What once looked manageable became uncomfortable. The family started noticing that payments were becoming more frequent and larger than expected. Because there was no detailed cost breakdown from the start, it was difficult to identify exactly where the money was going. Everything felt urgent. Everything felt necessary. And without a clear financial map, every request felt impossible to refuse. Delays soon followed. Weather interruptions, scheduling conflicts, and coordination issues slowed down progress. Labor stayed on site longer than planned, and each additional day meant additional cost. Even when little visible progress was made, expenses continued to accumulate. This is one of the most misunderstood realities of construction. Time itself has a price. Rent, utilities, labor standby, and supervision all add up quietly. For families working with tight budgets, delays can be just as damaging as poor material planning. The longer the project dragged on, the more pressure it placed on finances that were never designed to stretch that far. Eventually, savings began to run low. What was once a carefully planned budget turned into a daily struggle to keep construction moving. Borrowing became necessary. Credit cards were used. Additional remittances were sent, even when they were originally meant for other family needs. Financial decisions became reactive instead of planned. Stress replaced excitement. Instead of looking forward to completion, the family worried about how much more would be needed just to finish. This stage is where many homeowners feel trapped, too far along to stop, but no longer financially comfortable to continue. To survive the pressure, quality started to suffer. Certain materials were downgraded. Some construction steps were shortened or skipped. These decisions were not made out of carelessness, but desperation. The priority shifted from doing things properly to simply getting things done. While the house continued to take shape, hidden issues were already forming beneath the surface. These shortcuts might not be visible immediately, but they often lead to costly repairs in the future. What was saved in the short term often becomes more expensive later on. Looking back, this situation was not caused by bad luck or market conditions alone. The real issue was the absence of proper cost planning and independent guidance from the very beginning. There was no detailed estimate that accounted for realistic quantities, price fluctuations, or decision changes. Without that foundation, every adjustment became a risk. Construction is not just about building walls and roofs. It is about managing decisions, costs, and expectations from start to finish. With proper preparation, many of these problems could have been avoided. A realistic estimate, a clearly defined scope, and a reasonable budget buffer would have created protection. Independent advice could have challenged assumptions early, before money was committed and changes became irreversible. These steps do not eliminate risk, but they significantly reduce the chance of financial collapse during construction. If you are planning to build your own home, this story is not meant to scare you or discourage you. It is meant to prepare you. Most construction problems do not come from one big mistake. They come from many small ones that are never questioned. Understanding this early gives you control, and control is what protects your budget. And the most expensive mistake they made was not related to materials, labor, or delays. It was a decision made long before construction even started, a decision that almost every first-time homeowner still ignores today.